Next up we have Vanessa Onwuemezi.
This one's called Accusations, Accusations. The witch was standing on the front steps of her house, leaning forward, as if forehead on a pike. Her husband died, I've been told. Would it explain the wailing always seeming to be coming from there? Always seeming to my ears like it could be the wind, human or no difference? I've caught sight of her on other days, swaying barely upright, queuing at the post office, bank, supermarket, bar, pub, zebra crossing. Bones old feather crisp and she's light, as if held up by air. Particles. Particles. Is it loud enough? Can you hear me?
A bit louder.
A bit louder.
Yeah.
So this, the next one I'm going to read isn't mine actually. It's from I don't know if anyone knows it, but it's kind of a really brilliant writer, but somehow forgotten writer called Jayne Phillips. So the collection's called Black Tickets, and this is Solo Dance. She hadn't been home in a long time. Her father had a cancer operation. She went home. She went to the hospital every other day, sitting for hours beside his bed. She could see him flickering. He was very thin and the skin on his legs was soft and pure like fine paper. She remembered him saying, "I give up," when he was angry or exasperated. Sometimes he said it as a joke. "Jesus Christ, I give up." She kept hearing his voice and the words now, even though he wasn't saying them. She read his get well cards aloud to him. One was from her mother's relatives. "Well," he said, "I don't think they had anything to do with it." He was speaking of his divorce 2 years earlier. She put lather in a hospital cup, and he got up to shave in the mirror. He had to lean on the sink. She combed the back of his head with water and her fingers. His hair was long after 6 weeks in the hospital, a grey silver full of shadow and smudge. She helped him get slowly into bed, and he lay against the pillows, breathing heavily. She sat down again. "I can't wait till I get some weight on me," he said, "so I can knock down that son of a bitch lawyer right in front of the courthouse." She sat watching her father. His robe was patterned with tiny horses, sorrels and arabesques. When she was very young, she had started ballet lessons. At the first class, her teacher raised her leg until her foot was flat against the wall beside her head. He held it there and looked at her. She looked back at him, thinking to herself it didn't hurt and willing her eyes to dry. Her father was twisting his hands. "How's your mother?" "She must be half crazy by now. She wanted to be by herself, and brother, that's what she got." Okay, and back to me again. The punchline. Most of the misfortunes in my life I've taken with a pinch of salt, a tequila and a slice of lemon. Criticize me if you must, but understand that mostly it's water, water falling from oily feathers. These days, my sins come with lemons for collecting, laid out in neat lines, tracing my path through the woods. Neat lines, is what my grandfather used to say. He was a tailor and allergic to lemons and other kinds of citrus, agrumes in French. I think he is where most of my problems began. As for the rest, I grew up in the United Kingdom, enough said. Sometimes they call it Great Britain. But I hear these aren't exactly the same thing, territory. And so, on discovering this, Every form, application and census document filled out by my pen in every doctor's office, airport and DVLA, up to this point, shifted out of my mind's eye into the mystical. Thank you. There are people like that round here, she says, leaning against the bold brick wall. Some of it bright orange, some of it old tea and spice cakes. Her eyes squint into the wind. It bites. It doesn't put her off. Her face fills my view. Cigarette smoke washes away, forehead hard, round, like my eyes are spy holes or her face the back of a spoon. How do you know? I ask. She runs through a long list of broken skin and tears. Violation, in her words, of the innocence of a child. She jabs a finger there, at me, her arm a puckered blob, misshapen vase, old meat. They knew what they were doing, I said. They asked for the favours, the sweets and the cigarettes, led themselves into dark rooms and locked the doors behind them, never told the truth, never screamed. Screamed? Yes. Broken skin, she says. Look at their arms, thighs, they're screaming. She tells me about her nephew, how she'd squeezed his cheeks in, little balloons, till they were white, to make him laugh. Usually works, but the tears poured out of him and he was all closed up on the matter. Not a word, but there was screaming. A monster in our midst, she says. My head nods. Was that me or the wind? Only God knows. This one again. This is called Happy. She knew if she loved him, she could make him happy, but she didn't. Or she did, but it sank into itself like a whole cut and curled up content. Surrounded by the blur of her own movements, the thought of making him happy was very dear to her. She moved it from place to place, a surprise she never opened. She slept alone at night, soul of a naked priest in her sweet body. Small soft hands, a bread of desire rising in her stomach. When she lay down with the man she loved and didn't, the man opened and opened. Inside him an acrobat tumbled over death and walked thin wires with nothing above or below. She cried. He was so beautiful in his scarlet tights and white face the size of a dime. Thank you. And this is the last one. Heartland. He wasn't even sure when it began and ended. He wasn't sure if it was the beginning of the sickness he was at, or somewhere close to the end, the dark night. He was doubting himself. Free of securities, he'd become loose. Not sure whether he was man or woman. He, she wasn't sure if she was a flock of birds, actually. Each bird picked loose from the flock until she was all left apart. She climbed inside her sickness, the upper right heart chamber, atrium. Wore the chamber like a new skin, and she sweated all day and all night because of it. It was important to keep it moist, so that was something.